The Israel-Palestine conflict is one of the longest-standing disputes in modern history. It dates back to the late 19th and early 20th centuries when Jewish and Arab national movements emerged in the Middle East. The conflict intensified with the end of the Ottoman Empire and the British Mandate's establishment. Jews fleeing persecution in Europe sought a homeland, while Arabs resisted what they perceived as encroachment on their ancestral lands. The United Nations Partition Plan of 1947, which proposed separate Jewish and Arab states, was accepted by Jews but rejected by Arab leaders. This plan laid the groundwork for a protracted struggle over land, identity, and sovereignty. Over the decades, numerous wars, uprisings, and diplomatic efforts have tried to address these contentious issues. Despite various peace initiatives, a lasting solution remains elusive. The conflict is marked by a complex interplay of political, religious, and cultural factors. Each side holds deeply rooted historical narratives that influence their respective claims to the land. The international community has often been divided, with varying degrees of support for each side, further complicating efforts toward a resolution. Understanding the historical underpinnings of this conflict is crucial to comprehending its contemporary dynamics. The ongoing violence and political stalemate are deeply entrenched in the historical grievances and mutual distrust that have accumulated over decades. The conflict officially erupted in 1948 with the declaration of the State of Israel. This led to the First Arab-Israeli War, resulting in significant territorial gains for Israel and the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. This event, known as the Nakba, or catastrophe by Palestinians, remains a central grievance and symbol of their struggle. In 1967, the Six-Day War saw Israel capture the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem, territories considered by Palestinians as part of their future state. The occupation of these lands has been a major point of contention and has led to numerous conflicts and uprisings, including the Intifadas in the late 20th century. These uprisings were marked by widespread protests and violent clashes. The Oslo Accords of the 1990s were a significant milestone, creating the Palestinian Authority and providing limited self-governance in parts of the West Bank and Gaza. However, hopes for peace were dashed by continued violence, political assassinations, and the rise of new militant groups, which challenged the authority of traditional political leaders. In recent years, tensions have continued to flare with periodic escalations in violence, often sparked by specific incidents or broader geopolitical shifts. The cycle of violence has perpetuated a seemingly endless conflict, with each side blaming the other for the lack of progress toward peace. In October 2023, the conflict took a dramatic turn when Hamas and other Palestinian factions launched a surprise attack on Israel. This attack resulted in the deaths of 1,200 Israelis and the capture of hostages, marking one of the most significant escalations in recent years. The attack was seen by Hamas as a response to ongoing Israeli policies and actions perceived as oppressive. Israel's response was swift and severe, with a series of airstrikes and a ground operation targeting Gaza. The Israeli government, led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, justified these measures as necessary for national security and to deter future attacks. Critics, however, accused Netanyahu of using the conflict to rally domestic support amid legal challenges. The events of 2023 underscored the fragility of the situation and the potential for rapid escalation. The international community expressed concern over the violence, urging both sides to exercise restraint. However, diplomatic efforts to de-escalate the situation faced significant hurdles, with deep mistrust prevailing between the parties. As the conflict continues, the humanitarian impact has been profound, with both sides suffering significant casualties and damage to infrastructure. The events of 2023 serve as a stark reminder of the ongoing volatility in the region and the urgent need for a renewed commitment to peace. The aftermath of the 2023 conflict has been devastating for Gaza. By the end of 2024, reports indicate that over 46,000 Palestinians, including 13,300 children, have been killed. The number of injured individuals stands at 97,000, reflecting the intense and indiscriminate nature of the conflict. The scale of destruction has been unprecedented, with entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble. Displacement is a major issue, with almost 90% of Gaza's population forced to flee their homes. The lack of safe spaces has compounded the humanitarian crisis, leaving thousands to seek refuge in overcrowded shelters with limited resources. The situation in Gaza highlights the severe human cost of the conflict and the urgent need for international intervention to provide relief. The scale of casualties and displacement has drawn widespread condemnation from human rights organizations. They have called for accountability and the protection of civilians, emphasizing that the conflict's impact extends beyond immediate death and destruction to long-term psychological and economic ramifications. Efforts to address the humanitarian needs in Gaza have been hampered by ongoing hostilities and restrictions on aid access. The international community faces the challenge of balancing immediate humanitarian relief with long-term solutions to prevent further escalation and address the root causes of the conflict. Section 5. Accusations of genocide and ethnic cleansing. The tactics employed by Israel during the 2023 to 2024 conflict have drawn sharp criticism and accusations of genocide from various human rights groups. Organizations like Amnesty International have accused Israel of systematically targeting civilians and infrastructure in Gaza, creating conditions aimed at the physical destruction of the population. These accusations are supported by other rights groups and some UN legal bodies. The term genocide carries significant legal and moral weight, implying intent to destroy a people in whole or in part. The allegations against Israel have sparked intense debate and polarized opinions. Israel, for its part, denies these accusations, arguing that its military actions are aimed at neutralizing threats and defending its citizens from attacks. The use of tactics such as siege and scorched earth bombardment has been described as ethnic cleansing by critics. These tactics have not only resulted in significant civilian casualties, but have also destroyed critical infrastructure, exacerbating the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The accusations have led to calls for international investigations and accountability. The debate over these accusations highlights the complex nature of the conflict, where actions taken in the name of security are often perceived as aggression and oppression by the other side. The challenge lies in ensuring that international law is upheld while addressing the legitimate security concerns of all parties involved. Section 6. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The ongoing conflict has precipitated a dire humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The widespread destruction of infrastructure has left basic services in disarray. Reports indicate that 34 hospitals and 80 health centers have been damaged or destroyed, severely limiting access to medical care for the wounded and sick. The disruption of water, power, and fuel supplies has led to a public health emergency, with disease outbreaks and a looming famine threatening the population. Access to humanitarian aid has been severely restricted, exacerbating the crisis. The amount of aid entering Gaza in the latter months of 2024 was less than at any other time during the year. This restriction has hindered relief efforts and compounded the suffering of those affected by the conflict. The loss of over 350 aid workers, including 250 UN personnel, underscores the perilous conditions on the ground. The humanitarian crisis has drawn condemnation from international bodies and prompted urgent calls for increased aid access and protection of civilians. The International Rescue Committee and other organizations are actively working to provide emergency support, emphasizing the need for an immediate ceasefire and adherence to international humanitarian law. Efforts to address the humanitarian needs in Gaza must balance immediate relief with long-term strategies to rebuild infrastructure and restore normalcy. The international community faces the challenge of navigating political complexities while ensuring that the rights and dignity of affected populations are upheld. Section 7. The West Bank and Lebanon conflicts. The Israel-Palestine conflict is not confined to Gaza. Tensions have also flared in the West Bank and Lebanon. In the West Bank, clashes have resulted in the deaths of over 900 Palestinians and 49 Israelis since October 2023. The situation remains volatile, with frequent confrontations between Israeli forces and Palestinian protesters and militants. In Lebanon, a separate yet interconnected conflict unfolded between Israel and Hezbollah. The fighting, which lasted 2 months, resulted in over 3,800 deaths and the displacement of 1.4 million people. A ceasefire was reached in late 2024, but the situation remains fragile, with underlying tensions threatening to reignite hostilities. These conflicts highlight the regional dimension of the Israel-Palestine issue, where local events can have broader geopolitical repercussions. The involvement of state and non-state actors further complicates the landscape, making diplomatic resolutions challenging. Efforts to stabilize the region require addressing both the immediate security concerns and the underlying grievances that fuel the conflicts. The international community's role in facilitating dialogue and supporting peace initiatives is crucial to preventing further escalation and achieving lasting stability in the region. Section 8. International Response and Actions. The international response to the 2023 to 2024 conflict has been marked by a mix of support, condemnation, and diplomatic efforts. The United States has provided significant military aid to Israel, amounting to over $20 billion, and has blocked several UN efforts to cease the hostilities. This support underscores the strategic alliance between the US and Israel, but it has also drawn criticism from those who view it as exacerbating the conflict. The United Nations and other international bodies have repeatedly called for ceasefires and humanitarian aid access. The International Court of Justice ordered Israel to prevent acts of genocide and allow humanitarian aid, though these directives have been largely unheeded. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for key figures on both sides, reflecting the gravity of the allegations. The international community remains divided, with varying opinions on the conflict's causes and solutions. Some nations advocate for a two-state solution, while others support unilateral actions. The polarization within international forums highlights the challenges of achieving consensus on a path forward. As the conflict continues, the international community must navigate complex diplomatic terrain, balancing geopolitical interests with the urgent need to protect civilians and promote peace. The role of international law and multilateral diplomacy is critical in seeking a resolution that addresses the root causes of the conflict and ensures lasting security for all parties involved. Section 9. Humanitarian aid efforts and calls for ceasefire. Amidst the turmoil, humanitarian organizations have been at the forefront of relief efforts in Gaza and other affected areas. The International Rescue Committee and similar groups are providing critical support, including medical care, mental health services, and basic necessities for displaced populations. Their work is vital in alleviating the immediate suffering caused by the conflict. These organizations are calling for an immediate ceasefire to allow for increased aid access and the protection of civilians. The cessation of hostilities is seen as a necessary step to address the humanitarian crisis and enable rebuilding efforts. Despite these calls, achieving a ceasefire has been challenging, with ongoing violence and political stalemates hindering progress. The humanitarian situation underscores the need for a comprehensive approach that addresses both immediate needs and long-term solutions. The international community's support in facilitating aid and fostering dialogue is crucial to preventing further deterioration of the situation. As the conflict enters a new phase, the focus must shift toward sustainable peace initiatives that address the grievances of all parties involved. The path to peace requires collaboration, empathy, and a commitment to justice and human rights, ensuring that future generations can live free from the cycle of violence and despair.